Tasmat, therefore, yoga, for the sake of devotional service, Yudyasva, be so engaged. Yoga, Krishna consciousness. Karmasu, in all activities. Kausalam is art. A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions, even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. Purport. Since time immemorial, each living entity has accumulated the various reactions of his good and bad karma. As such, he is continuously ignorant of his real constitutional position. One's ignorance can be removed by the instruction of Bhagavad-gita, which teaches one to surrender unto Lord Shri Krishna in all respects and become liberated from the chained victimization of action and reaction, birth after birth. Arjuna is therefore advised to act in Krishna consciousness, the purifying process of resultant action. So repeat the translation again. Repeat after me. A man engaged in devotional service.
A man engaged in devotional service
rids himself of both good and bad.
Of both good and bad.
Reactions even in this life. Therefore strive for yoga. Which is the art of all work. So this is Krishna instructing Arjuna. This is right at the beginning. Just after the war was about to begin, Arjuna posed a series of questions and he was illusioned, he was bewildered. Why should I fight my relatives? What's the point even if I win? And then Krishna starts instructing him on a series of instructions. He comes upon the stage and he is asking Arjuna to engage in devotional service. Then what's the result of such an engagement? That you would become free from all reactions, both good and bad, even in this life. Right? So then he is insisting, therefore you should strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. So, where is that Mataji? She raised the question. See this appeal. Okay. So, here the word used is buddhi yukta. Prabhupada translates that as engaged in devotional service. Right? So buddhi means intelligence, right? Now, when does intelligence manifest? What is intelligence? So, it is described in the Upanishads. What is intelligence? First we have to understand. Intelligence, the example is given that our body, right? It's compared to a chariot. And body has different senses, right? So it has eyes, nose, ears, tongue. All these senses, they are compared to horses, right? So a horse is pulling the chariots. Sorry, is pulling a chariot, right? So horses are running wild and going in different directions and pulling the chariot. Similarly, the senses, they are running wild. Eyes, they want to see something nice, nose wants to smell something nice, right? Tongue wants to taste something nice, ears want to hear something nice. So they are getting pulled in different directions, they are pulling the body. So that is a comparison. Then, how do you control the horses? By the reins, right? You pull the reins. So the reins is your mind. So mind interacts with the senses. As soon as sense sees a sense object, a thought comes in the mind, maybe I should enjoy that sense object. So the reins, they are controlling the horses. The mind is sort of an instrument that is connected to the senses. But the reins are in the hands of a chariot driver, right? Chariot driver, it's pulling the reins back, it's controlling the horses. The horses should not go. So it's intelligence, which is, mind is passive. Mind in itself is not an active entity. Mind is pulled from two directions. One is on one side, just like reins, right? One side the horses are pulling, another side the driver is pulling. So mind is passive entity. It's pulled on one side by the senses, on the other side by the intelligence. So the intelligence is weak. Mind is overcome by the senses. But the intelligence is strong, it can discriminate. Okay, maybe this smells nice and tastes nice, but you know what, I have diabetes, maybe I should not eat something sweet. I mean, this is a very crude example, and it's much more complex, but the point is that intelligence is an active element. So intelligence is something that you apply, right? So Srimad Bhagavad-gita translates Buddhi Yukta, one who is engaged in devotional service. So the person who a devotee, right, when he applies his intelligence, what does he do? By the superior intelligence, it directs his senses through the mind in the service of the Supreme Lord. That's how you translate Buddhi Yukta as devotional service. That is the application of intelligence. When you apply your intelligence properly in controlling the senses so that you can engage in the service of the Lord, that is Buddhi Yoga. Jnana is different, right? You know so many things, right? Even if you give a mundane example, I work in a corporation, I have colleagues who know a lot, right? And even you might have come across in your field, whatever field you are in, working semiconductor or IT, there are people who know a lot of things, but that doesn't in itself mean that they have the drive to get things done. That's a problem. Let me solve this. How to resolve this. They know a lot. The application portion is missing. So there's a difference between jnana and buddhi. You might have knowledge, but apply, that is intelligence. So now you can apply in a good sense, you can apply in a bad sense. But the devotee, the point is, he is engaged. He is engaging his senses by proper application of intelligence in service of the Lord. So by this, what happens? Krishna is saying he gets rid of all the good and bad results. Right? So somebody might say, okay, bad results are gone. What is this about good results? Why should I get rid of good results? It doesn't make much sense, right? Right? I mean, it's the common inclination or the proclivity of a living entity doing that wants good. So why is Krishna saying that you will get rid of good and bad results? So we'll talk about that. Right? And he says, for the sake of devotional service, because he is in this way, he is engaged in this activity of Krishna consciousness, and it's described as kaushalam. Kaushalam means an art. Right? In many places we see Krishna consciousness, it's a science. Those who have read Srimad Bhagavad-gita books. Generally, the understanding of people is that Krishna consciousness or religion in general, it's dogma. You believe, right? Sometimes you see some fanatic sects or Christian, you believe in Jesus, believe. If you don't believe, then that's it. Don't ask questions. This is it, you believe. It's kind of enforcing. So that is dogmatic, that is not science. But Srimad Bhagavatam describes Bhagavad-gita Vijnana means science, realized knowledge, something that you can apply. So the Krishna consciousness is a science, it's not a dogma, it's and then how, right? If you see this discourse of Krishna and Arjuna, Arjuna is asking a lot of intelligent questions. Right? Krishna is saying he is not accepting. Krishna is not saying that this is what I am saying, you have to accept. This is it. my way or highway. He's not saying that. Right? So there is back and forth. Arjuna is asking intelligent questions, and Krishna is giving answers. So it's a science. It's something that can be learned. Right? So there are principles. You can learn this science. It's not at all. The word used over here is also, in this specific verse, is kaushalam, which means art. Right? So what is it? Is it a science or is it an art?
It's both.
Both, right? Just like to give an example, you might be designing, you might be a car production company, right? So there's a lot of science that goes into it. You might know a lot of principles, right? You go through an engineering course, you learn all the mechanics, dynamics, statics, stress, strain, torque, you learn all those machines, right? There are so many mechanical engineers. So they have learned the science. You can ask them, give them a problem, they will solve the equation. Why? Because they know the science. But does it mean that all mechanical engineers are good designers? Can they make new inventions? Henry Ford, right? He created the first automobile and then he created the assembly. He didn't go to a engineering school. He was just working on a farm. But so the point I'm trying to say that even if somebody knows it, there's a lot of art that goes in it. It's just because you know the science doesn't mean that you can start creating things. So it's an art. You know the principles, right? The science, right? There are a set of rules. Now you need to know when to apply which one. Sometimes you will break the rules, right? So when do you apply, when do you break, right? So there is an art. So Krishna consciousness, it's a science as well as an art. An expert devotee knows both the portions, science as well as the art. It's definitely not a dogma. And that one who has practiced, one who has studied, one who has experienced can realize that. So coming to the point, so he gets rid of both good and bad activities. So bad, okay, I understand what is good. So now let's try to understand from a perspective of a devotee. One, as we understood, buddhi yoga, intelligence. By his intelligence, his only concern is how to engage the senses on the service of the Lord. Because he is fixated, because he is situated in that position, the understanding of good and bad doesn't hold any meaning for a devotee. Because he is not interested in his personal benefit. He is just interested in satisfying the Supreme Lord. So, for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, if he is in a situation which an ordinary or a non-devotee might consider it as good, that is fine with him. And for the satisfaction of the Lord, even if he is in a situation which somebody might consider as not so good, then also that's fine with him. There are many examples we see. So he is not concerned with his own position, what is considered as good and bad. These are realities, right? In Gita, Krishna says. So everything in the world you see that realities. There is extreme heat and then extreme cold. Right? And heat and cold, day and night, happiness, misery. So all these realities are there. As long as we are in this material world, the realities are present. And they are non-permanent. None of them, neither of the situation lasts forever. Right? It's not that, of course, in Arizona you have a very long summer, but it also comes to an end. Similarly, other places, if there is an extreme cold, that also comes to an end. And then sometimes you are materially doing good, then you are not doing good, or you are happy or sad. So it's a constant cycle. And similarly, the living entity, we study what is mind, what is intelligence, right? All those things. So there is karma, right? So you do good karma, you get good results. You do bad karma, you get bad results. So there is a law of karma. But there is something subtler than karma, which is driving the karma. It's called gunas. Guna, there are three primary gunas, right? Which is sattva, raja, tama. Sattva means mode of goodness, raja means mode of passion, and tama means mode of ignorance. So, just to give you an example, there are three primary colors, right? Red, green, and blue. And if you mix them in different proportions, it can create innumerable shapes, right? There is no limit to it, to number of colors you can create by combination of these three primary colors in different fashion. Similarly, the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. What is goodness? Goodness means when you feel happy, when you feel satisfied, right? You find your inner peace, knowledge, enlightenment. That is goodness. Passion is when you get things done, right? There's a lot of passion, right? I want this, and get things done. So there's more of passion. More of ignorance means you're lazy, you're dull, and then you're lost hope, disappointment, depressed. So these are all modes. In any activity that you do, any creature, any living entity in this entire universe, all the activities that they do, they are influenced by these three modes. Even the food that you eat, people say, okay, giving in charity, right? So that is considered good. But the Gita says that even charity can be of three types: mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. Charity given to your superiors, those who are self-realized souls. You give them charity for your own purification. That is charity in the mode of goodness. Charity in mode of passion is something that you do it for your own benefit, right? Okay, I'll give charity, I'll get tax benefit. Or you want to gain some favor from someone, right? Or you just want to satisfy your ego. That is charity in mode of passion. Charity in mode of ignorance is given whimsically, without any consideration of time, place, circumstances to whoever you want. Right? That is a mode of ignorance. If you go and you come across a bum on the street and he say, I'm miserable, can you give me some money, give him $5, he goes and booze. Right? He goes and has liquor. So you thought you helped him out, but then that is a mode of ignorance. He didn't do anything good with it. So the point is, any activity that you do, it's influenced by three modes in different proportions. So the point I'm trying to say is that each of us, we are influenced by these three different modes in different proportions at different times. And we are forced to act under the influence of the mode. Bhagavad-gita Krishna says, Ahankar vimudatma karta aham iti manyate. By false ego, a living entity thinks that I am the doer. But actually, all activities are being done by these three modes. And only because he thinks that I am the doer, he has to either enjoy the results of the activity or he has to suffer. But a self-realized soul knows that he is not the doer. So the earlier example of the chariot that I gave, right? We talked about intelligence. Intelligence is the chariot driver, right? And mind is the reins. So where is the soul? We didn't talk about that. Soul is the person who is sitting behind the chariot. He is not driving it, right? So depending on the condition of the road, depending on the condition of the chariot, depending on how good the driver is, he is enjoying or suffering his ride, but he is himself not doing it. So that is our situation. Because of our false ego, because we identify ourselves with the body, because the passenger on the chariot identifies himself either with the chariot or the horses or the reins or the driver. People think I am my mind, whatever my thoughts are, that's what I am. But that is mine, that is not him. I say my intelligence, that means I am different from my intelligence. So intelligence is, as I say, the chariot driver is different from the passenger. So I guess the point I am trying to say is that we are forced to act, but because of false ego, we think that I am the doer. So we have to study all this analytically. So now because we are forced to act in different fashion and under the modes of nature, our activities are constantly changing. Sometimes we are in the mode of goodness, right? You are very nice, you are humble, you are helping out people, you feel inner strength. That goes on for a certain time, maybe for your entire life, or maybe few years, we don't know. But then you feel, you know what, I was so nice, right? But how did it help me? It didn't help me at all, right? You see this person, he's doing all this nonsense and he got help. So he gets into the mode of passion, leaves the mode of goodness. He's being forced. Then he becomes passionate and he puts so much time, effort, he wants to get things done, to achieve things in life and this and that. And then he gets so much burnt out, he makes so much sacrifices to gain whatever he wanted to pursue. But then again say, hey, okay, I got all that I wanted, but then was it worth it? I was so passionate about my life. And he gets depressed and then he gives it up and he starts taking up intoxication, or like he's just hopeless, disappointed, and then he goes on for that situation. And after some time, hey, what am I doing with my life? I'm doing this. You see, this constantly goes up. So what I'm trying to say is that no one can be good forever. No one can remain bad forever. Maybe you're good all your life. By the effect of time, maybe in your next life, the species, you'll be forced to act in a different fashion. That is the nature. So the laws of karma are there. You get good results, you do good activities, you get good results. You do bad activities, you get bad results. But you can never be good forever. It's not possible. The only option is one who is buddhi yukta, one who is a devotee of the Lord. He is indifferent to the good and the bad, the dualities of that. His only focus is how to satisfy Krishna. And for him, the good and bad does not hold any, doesn't make any difference. It's just an external thing. Right? So the living entity, it's transmigrating in this 8.4 million species of life. It's forced to. Doesn't have an option. So unless we realize this rare human form of life and understanding the science of self-realization, in re-establishing our relationship with the Supreme Lord, Krishna, we'll be forced to act in this different fashion. And you cannot maintain a particular state forever. You will be just going around in circles. So, if you are constantly moving, right? Suppose there's a point on a wheel, right? And the wheel is continuously rotating on your car. And you drive the car at some RPM. The RPM is of the engine, it's not the wheel. But the point is you can also measure the RPM of your wheel. So, what's an RPM of a wheel for if you're going at 60 miles an hour? I don't know. Yes. 10, 15, 20, whatever. So, whatever the number is, the point I'm trying to say is there's a point on the wheel. Right? Your wheel is moving so fast. Or even if it's moving slow, the point is on the top and it starts going down, which is the bottom, and it goes up. Right? It's continuously it's happening. So does it really make a difference? Can you say that what is the position of that point? One point is at a higher stage, at the epic, and another instance it's at the very bottom. Right? And it's constantly changing. So does it really make any sense or point saying that which is good? Is it constantly changing? So we are looking at a very small span of time. 100 years. What's 100 years? Even if you live 100 years. What's 100 years compared to the entire span of eternity? And you see, okay, 100 years. This is my life. I'm an Indian, or I'm an American, or I'm well educated, I have a good position in the society. This is my status. Right? So when you're looking at a very small span, you say, I have a good karma. You see, I've done so much charity in my life. So my next life is going to be fine. That's our understanding. We don't know. I mean, I might think that I have been good, but maybe it's not, my life's maybe not so clean. I mean, I'm not the judge. And even if it is nice, right? Even if I did everything nice and it's my future life secured, I don't know how I am going to be in my next life, whether I'll do good karma or bad karma. But the science says, or the pattern says that by the effect of time, I'll be forced to be in a different position, willingly or unwillingly. It's not an option. You cannot stay in a particular situation forever. So all this, we get wrapped around all this good and bad and the dualities, but if you, from an absolute perspective, this really doesn't hold any difference. So the only thing which is substantial is whether are you engaged in service of Krishna or not, and to what extent you are engaged. That is a form, because what's the eternal position of the soul? Jiveshu Rukhoi Krishna Nityadas. The eternal position of the soul is to be an associate of Krishna. And in that position you can always enjoy. It's a secondary enjoyment. See, I'm serving Krishna. Krishna is happy, so I'm happy. So that is a pleasure that you get. It's not something like drudgery, like you're forced to, okay, tomorrow is Monday, I will go to work, I hate it. But I have to go, and then because I get paid, and so yeah, I'm just saying, like, or there's slavery, right? You're forced to do something. It's not like that. It's out of love. You serve Krishna. And you serve Krishna in different form. You can serve him even as a friend, as a parent or a lover, conjugal associate. There are different modes. There's intimacy. So it's not dull and boring. So coming to the question, the original question, I was going all around in the circle. But I was setting the premise. The question is does astrology have devotees or not? So astrology is definitely a science. It is there. It's a detailed science. I mean, if one who is expert can go and precisely predict so many things. Unfortunately, in the age of Kali, the Iron Age, most of that knowledge is lost. We don't find expert astrologers who can really interpret the charts and provide accurate predictions, or but the science is there. I'm not saying there's no one out there. There are different. You might find a good astrologer, but it's definitely not at the same level or same efficacy as it used to be in the ancient times.